Hey there, I'm Mikkel Moose, and today I'm going to show you my Frozen-inspired Anna dress. I'll begin by showing you the materials that I will be using. I've got dark blue fabric and light blue fabric, purple fabric, a mousse. You always need a mousse while you're making things. I have black fabric, scissors, needle and thread or a sewing machine, and a doll. I also have a bunch of different types of embroidery thread and a big needle to use the embroidery thread with because her dress has all these really cute little details. I've never actually embroidered before, but I figure it's pretty simple, right? Also, if I can find my Velcro, I'm going to use that to close up the back, and if I can't find the Velcro, I'm just going to go with buttons. I have no idea where it went. It just ran away. So to begin, I'm going to take my doll, and I'm going to take my black fabric, and in my case, I'm actually using just a scrap of fabric that I had left over from something. And you're going to wrap it around and find the length that you need. You want it to overlap in the back for a couple of reasons. The first reason is you need to have seam allowance, and you also need extra room so it overlaps so you can apply whatever you're going to use to close it, like Velcro or buttons. And also because you don't want to make it too small and have to add on fabric, and it's easier if you just make it bigger in the back. So now I'm going to figure out where I want it to fall, and I'm going to go right where the doll's hip joints are, and I'm going to cut a triangular shape, and I'm going to make the triangle a bit exaggerated because once again I need to make that seam allowance. Okay, so this is what I have now, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold over the edge on the bottom all the way, so it's just folding over, and then I'm going to sew the whole bottom, and I will do the top in just a moment. So I finished sewing the bottom. Now I'm going to take my doll. I used a light thread so you can see, not a white thread, but it's light. I'm going to take my doll now, and I'm going to start working on the top portion. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to find where her arm would fold down, and I'm going to cut. I'm going to cut down probably about an inch. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and I'm going to make sure that the point is lined up where I want it to be before I cut. So I've got that, and then what I'm going to do, you don't want to look at feet, so there's that. I'm going to fold this piece over, and I'm going to sew it so that this piece actually sticks up higher, like that. Can you feel like that? And then I'm going to make a cut in the center of this, in the center of the piece that's sticking up. Okay. And then I'm going to, you can go over here for a moment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to round these two pieces off so they're not like square, and we're going to make them more heart-shaped by just folding over the corners and sewing those down. So I finished sewing the top, and the bottom has already been sewed. So now to finish doing the top portion, I have to try my best at embroidering. And to embroider, I've gotten that thick embroidery thread, and I'm guessing you probably use regular thread, but the embroidery thread is just thicker than a regular thread. So it takes less string to get the job done. I'm not sure if you're supposed to tie the end like this when you embroider. I think you're supposed to leave it untied, but like I said, I've never actually embroidered before, so I'm just going to kind of do it my own way. And to show you the design that I'm going to be sewing onto the bodice here, I drew it out so you guys can kind of see. It's green swirls and lines and prettiness and red dots. And while I was looking, trying to figure out the design on the bodice, I realized that I have already messed this dress up. Anna's dress actually has like small straps coming from the top. But you know what? This Anna's dress isn't going to have them. That's why I say it's inspired by the dress, not a recreation of the dress. So I'm just going to begin embroidering, and I don't know how long this is going to actually take me, but we will see. But I'm guessing it's very similar to just sewing. I could be wrong. Okay, so I finally finished sewing on the embroidery, and I've added the little florets or flowers, I don't know what you call that. But there is that, and the back is like a mess of thread. So now I'm going to do the top portion where the sleeves are, and to do that I'm going to need my doll, and I'm going to need my light blue fabric, which is once again another scrap of fabric. And what I'm going to be doing is making like a half shirt. So I'm going to start with this portion here up at the top, and then I'm going to add the sleeves on. So to do that, I'm going to just measure out the fabric. I'm going to eyeball it and figure out the width that I want. And then once I figure out the width, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it over. I'm going to fold the fabric over and kind of figure out the length that I want, and I want a double the length, so part of it will go on the top, or part of it will go on the front and part of it will go on the back. Is this making any sense? I don't know. So what I end up with here is pretty much like an 8x8 square. It's actually 7 3/4 by 7 3/4, but an 8x8 inch square would make things easier for you if you use the measurements when you're cutting this out. Now I'm going to fold it bad side to bad side, and I am going to sew about, okay, I'm going to fold it bad side to bad side, and I'm going to sew about 1.5 to 2 inches up on the bottom, and I'm going to leave the top open so her arms can stick out. Okay, so I finished sewing there and over there. I'm going to flip it right side out now. As you can see, my fingers can go out the sides there. That's where her arms are going to go. And now I'm going to figure out where I want her head to come out. And obviously we want her head to be coming up in the middle. So I'm going to cut a hole there. Alright, and because her head is a bit bigger than this hole probably, and we want the dress to be easy to get on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it. I'm going to find the center of that, and I'm going to cut down. I'm not going to cut all the way down. I may end up cutting all the way down later. I don't know. We'll find out. So now I'm going to put this on the doll. Okay, that looks actually really, really good. I still need to seam this, which is probably going to be kind of hard, but I'll fold it over and then just sew so that way it doesn't have that rough edge. And then we need to add the sleeves on because Elsa's dress is a long sleeve. So I'm going to show you how I make the sleeves real quick, and that's really easy. Yeah, you just wrap it around your doll's hand or her arm, figuring out the length that you need and the width that you need. Make sure it's a little bit bigger. This piece of fabric is 6 inches long and 5.5 inches wide. Like it when do you guys like it when I give you the measurements? I don't know if you do or if you don't, but you're going to cut out 2 pieces of fabric that are the same length, and then you're going to go bad side to bad side. You're going to hem this edge which because this is an old t-shirt, it's already hemmed for me. And then you're going to sew all the way down, and you're going to leave the top and the bottom open for her arm. So I'm going to hem the top of her shirt, and I'm going to sew the two sleeves together. Alright, so I've finished sewing the sleeves, and I'm going to flip it right side out. Okay. And I've got my shirt, I've hemmed the front there, you see, and I've already sewed one of the sleeves on. Be quiet, honey. I've already sewed one of the sleeves on. Okay, so I'm going to sew the next sleeve on, and how I'm going to do that is I'm going to take, this is flipped right side out, the good side is out, and so I'm going to take the sleeve and I'm going to put it in, and then I'm going to flip that. I'm going to match up the seams on the bottom, and I'm going to take needle and thread, because I don't actually know how to do this with a sewing machine yet. One of these days I will learn how. And I'm just going to hand sew it all the way around. Okay, so I put the top on the doll to show you guys what it looks like when it's finished, and also because I am going to connect the bodice to the doll, and I'm going to do that by, first I'm going to lay it out and see where I want it to fall, where I want it to sit. So I'm just going to wrap that around the little half shirt, and I've got a ton of fabric in the back, but that's okay, I'm going to leave that. I'm not going to mess with the back at the moment. I'm just kind of trying to secure it on the front. So I'm going to line up that point where I want it to lie in the center, and adjust things around. And then I'm going to take a pen, make sure you don't use a marker or anything that's going to bleed through the fabric onto your doll. I'm just going to use a pen, and I'm going to mark underneath where this lies, kind of just for a reference while I'm sewing, to make sure that I'm covering where I need to go. I'm doing it underneath where it will be, so the pen mark is going to be covered. And now I'm going to take this and this off of my doll, and I'm going to sew just the top portion onto the doll, this heart-shaped spot right here onto, I'm not sewing it onto the doll, I'm sewing it onto the shirt. So I'm going to take the shirt off, the half shirt, and then I'm going to sew just this heart-shaped portion onto the fabric, and then we will start working on the skirt. Okay, so I finished sewing on the front. I left the back kind of still hanging, as you can see, but the front is connected. The two pieces in the front are now connected, if only by a few threads. They are. So I'm going to start working on the skirt, and for that I'm going to need my dark blue fabric, and this is like 18 inches by 22 inches that I'm starting out with. And this is like a quilter square that you can purchase at Joann Fabrics, and I probably should have ironed it because it's got creases in it still, but who has time to iron things? So I start by folding it in half, and then I'm going to figure out the length that I want. This skirt I'm making differently than I did the one that I made for the Elsa dress. It's just a little bit different. It's not much harder. But I'm going to make it so it goes pretty much to where the short shirt ends. And then I'm going to cut it just a little bit below her feet. Actually, it's 12 inches, like on the dot, so when this is unfolded, it's 18 inches by 12 inches. So I'm going to place my doll in the center, and Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the corner and I'm going to cut diagonally up to the waist, and I'm going to keep going in closer and closer until I am like a half an inch away from her waist. And I get a little strip like this. Bing. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And what we end up with is 2 pieces of fabric that look like this. So, and it just kind of gradually flares. We'll see if this turns out as a better looking skirt. I don't know. So I'm going to sew these edges. I'm going to first begin by separating the 2 pieces of fabric and flipping over the bottom edge and sewing that, and then I'm going to sew the sides together on both sides. I'm going to leave the top and bottom open so I can flip this. I'm not going to sew the top because that is going to be attached to other pieces of fabric. So, okay, so I finished sewing everything and I flipped it right side out so all the seams are on the inside. And now I'm going to place it on the doll and hopefully it will fit. And the waist is too small to go over her hips, so I'm going to have to make a slight modification. I am going to cut down the center of the back of the dress just a little bit so I can squeeze the dress. Okay, so sad story. Jinsy's butt is a little too big for the skirt that I made. So I'm going to have to make a modification. I'm going to take, where was that scrap of fabric? Woohoo. I'm going to take this scrap of fabric and I'm going to sew it on to this ginormous gap in the back and make it fit better. I'm going to do that by flipping it wrong side out, matching these sides up, and then just sewing this big piece of extra fabric. Obviously I won't need it to be quite that long, but yeah, so what I just did for that skirt there, make sure you make it much bigger at the top. Okay, problem all fixed. That little extra piece of fabric has made it so it fits. It doesn't look exactly like I was planning, but it fits now, which is kind of important when making doll clothes. You guys are probably thinking right now, and I'm letting this lady show me how to make a doll dress? Sorry, I'm learning as I go. So next part of the dress is connecting these 2 pieces, and you know, I think I'm actually just gonna cut the fabric on the back of this dress all the way down, or the short shirt. I'm just gonna cut it all the way down. I'm gonna sew the blue shirt to the dark blue skirt, and then I will finish off by sewing the black fabric around on the back and on the sides, and I'm just going to leave all that extra fabric for now. I know I don't need it. I will be cutting it off later, but I'm just going to leave it for now. Right now I'm just going to sew all the way around the dress. Okay, so I finished sewing the black bodice portion all the way around on the blue, and I've decided that I do actually need to cut it before I sew on the skirt. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a little bit of extra fabric, sew there. That's what I'm going to cut off. Just a couple little inches here. And so this is what the back looks like now. And that's what the front looks like now. And so I'm just going to begin to sew the skirt to the bottom of this now. And now I don't have all that extra fabric on the back. It's going to mess with my brain. So I finished sewing the dress all together, as you can see, all the way around. And I've also started working on the buttons on the back here. And I have one. If you have Velcro, feel free to use it. I do not know where my Velcro is, so I'm using buttons, and I'm using 4 on the back. To pick out where I'm going to set the button, I just kind of pull it over and see where it lays, and then I cut a little hole in it, and then I will later go through and sew around the buttonhole, but I'm just going to skip that step right now. Here's the buttons in the back. It'd probably look better if I did Velcro. That's just what it looked like right now. The last piece of the dress requires the purple fabric. So her cloak is in 2 pieces. The first piece is just a long piece, and then there's the piece that goes over her shoulder. So there's going to be the 2 pieces that we'll end up sewing together. And so to begin, we're just going to find the length for the first one. We want it to kind of wrap over her shoulders a little bit. So I'm going to just kind of figure out kind of how long we want it to be. Okay. And so this is for just the long portion of the cloak. Okay. And as you can see, it's not going to fold completely over her, but it's like more of a cape. This is about 13 inches. So this is 13 by 16 inches, 13 wide, 16 long. Don't want to lose that. And so I'm going to start by hemming all of the edges. Yep, so I'm going to hem those, and I will get back to you. Alrighty then, so I've hemmed all of the edges. Okay, but anyway, so the next part, I'm going to flip to the good side, and I'm going to fold I'm going to leave it slightly open on the fold, as you can see here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew a diagonal line going from the top of this slightly down, just barely diagonal. Let me show you real quick. Like this, just on both sides. And that's going to create a slope for her shoulder so she doesn't have crazy pokey looking shoulders on this cloak. Once you finish sewing that, you can flip it. Well, you probably want to cut the excess fabric off actually before you get all flippy. Now we're going to flip it. And so now it will sit over your doll's shoulders a little bit more nicely. Oh, look at that. I've still got crazy pointy shoulders. I guess I didn't do quite enough of a slope. Once again, you're like, what is this lady doing? Okay, I'm gonna do a more dramatic slope. Less crazy pointy shoulders. Yay! Doesn't actually touch in the front, but that's okay. We'll get to that. But this is the beginning of her cloak. So the second part of her cloak is going to close all the way around. And I'm going to use that leftover bit of fabric that we had. And so because we want it to wrap all the way around, you know, wrap the fabric all the way around her. Alright, so this piece of fabric is 18 inches by 5 inches, for those of you who like the measurements. Well, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of cut some of this excess fabric off on the corners to kind of round it off, because in the front of the top of her cloak is rounded. And now I'm going to go and hem all of the edges just like I did before. That's kind of what it looks like now, just a little bit rounded at the edges there. And then once it's hemmed, I'm going to do the same thing that I did before, where I folded it with the bad side facing out and do the shoulder. And this time I know I need to make a more dramatic angle. But instead of leaving it open in the front, I'm going to make sure that it's overlapped. So I finished sewing the edges and the shoulder. Now I'm going to cut off the excess fabric. I'm going to flip it right side out. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach them both at the top, because the back and the top both line up. So all I'm going to do is just sew these two together. The long portion and the short portion. Okay, so I finished attaching the two pieces together. And so now all that's left to do is attach a button right up here. So that's the end of it. That's the last step, is adding the button. And that is my tutorial on how to make a Frozen inspired Anna dress. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. I make videos like this nearly weekly. Sometimes it's a little over a week. I try. You can also comment down below about what you think I should make next. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next week.